Last episode you saw the cleanup that happened in the wheelhouse, including the floor, the air conditioner that started to go into the wheelhouse up on the back here, the engine room of doom that needed to be cleaned, Jess dealing with some fiddles on the shelves, Scott putting the seats in so that we could finally get to sea. Brupeg was a sunken fishing trawler that was stripped out and ready for the scrapyard. She's just completed a 10-year rebuild that's brought her back to life. With the help of volunteers and funded by our Patreons, community and subscribers, she'll be crewed by passionate people from around the world. If you'd like to be involved and support the project, please consider joining us on Patreon or subscribe to the channel. There's a link in the description below. The last couple of times we've taken Brupeg out to sea, we've had the windows open on the back here. Now that's given us a little bit of cooling, but because we're going to sea, we need to make the wheelhouse waterproof. So that means sealing them up, which also means the place turns into a glass house. So we're adding air conditioning so it's human rated. For the mounts, we're just going to use angle. So I've got 50 by 50 stainless angle, and then 100 by 100 stainless angle, because the roof slopes off. So if I put them sort of staggered like so, this one on the lower side, this one on the upper side, it basically means that the air conditioner is going to be level. I don't have to muck around building particular mounts, they do it for me. So I need to drill some holes in these and then clean up the edges so that we've got mounts that are safe to be on the roof. Now the ribs on the rear roof, the saloon roof, 450mm from one side, from the back of the wheelhouse out to the first rib is 450mm. This is 500mm, so it means it overlaps basically a rib and the back of the wheelhouse wall. So it's going to be nice and strong. It's going to be welded to the roof, but the roof's only 3mm, and this will be basically independent because it's going to sit on a structural member and the back of the wheelhouse roof. As you can see, if I can get this built quickly, we've got perfect conditions to weld something onto the rear roof. So positioning this thing, what we're thinking, we're going to have some sort of window here so that we can see at the back end of the boat when we're reversing. It's really quite handy. So we're moving this as far over this side as we can. Obviously we don't want to block this window. Now that I know the position it has to sit in, I've marked everything. I just need to grind the paint off so I can weld the stainless mounts to the mild steel roof. This is kind of what we're fighting today. You can see all that weather coming in over the back. The wind's coming pretty much straight at us, and that's going to be here in about 2 minutes. So yep, let's bail for the second. So we've ground away the paint, those areas you can see there with little squares. That's down to bare steel, so time to get the air conditioner here placed on top, and we can weld it in place. Remember that this is not a work berth, so any work that we do has to be inside. Currently I'm outside, and now you can see that I'm inside. With the indoor portion of the welding now complete, it's time to start working on the plumbing. With the outside unit now bolted down, we can figure out where to put this. Obviously I've got this up here at the moment with a couple of rivets. I'll put a whole bunch more in there to make that really rigid onto the wall, but that's going to be the final position of this indoor unit. I'll put the indoor unit up because that'll tell us where the pipes have to go through the wall. We start putting the 2 gas pipes as well as the 3-core plus earth cable that goes between the 2 units. Right, I've just done a measure up. I'm going to put a hole here for the gas, and a hole here for the cable that goes through the wall. Now we've got to protect obviously these from chafe and things like that, but also because we're going into cold environments, we don't want any heat loss either from here going out or when we're in the hot climates from the outside coming in. So we need to seal up both of these holes pretty well. Time to get the pipes out the back and this thing mounted up here properly. Now, if you look really closely, you may see there's a small hole here. That's going to be filled up with a window, so don't panic too much about that at this stage. Admittedly, there's a bit of air leakage, but we'll deal with that. Done. Absolutely no swearing happened off camera. So I've mounted the gas pipes, I've flared these fittings and mounted the gas pipes. Thanks, love. So you can see I've mounted these gas pipes here. These are the originals here, and they stop at these nuts here, and I've extended it, so this black is my extension. So these have been flared, and I need to tighten these up, but they're bolted on, and they've come along here. I've got a couple of P-clamps, stainless P-clamps. Now we do need to do some paint work up here. This whole back wall needs to be painted. I'm not really worried about drilling out a few pot rivets to get to these when we need to, but what we've also done is, this is the drain, so rather than have it go down into a pipe and go off somewhere, we're just going to drop it onto the roof, but put a couple of P-clamps on there as well. And this is also at a continual down slope, so if you have, sometimes when you install air conditioners, if you have this drain and it does a slight up and then down, you'll end up with a lot of water dripping inside the actual inside unit. So if you always want to make sure that you've got this drain pointing downwards the whole time, so you can sort of see there it's coming down, does a nice gentle curve, P-clamp to the wall, and it's on the outside of these mounts, so it's going to drop away. It's not going to pull in this area of the mounts or anything like that. So yeah, give this whole area a really good clean up now, put the outside unit on, and we can start trimming these lines to the length that they need to be.
You may remember a while ago Margot did some fiddles for the shelves. They were wood, they were painted, they had little holes in them for fingers to pull them in and out. They were too hard, they didn't work out. I tried to save them but couldn't, and we decided that acrylic was an easy fix. And because we're all visual people, we really love being able to see what's in behind them. So just aiming for the little black dot I made to know where to drill a hole. So these will do for now. We can change them out to toughened glass at some point if we want, but this enables us to get to see.
Next job on the list is cutting up some of this acrylic. We're going to put this as temporary windows in the back of the wheelhouse to seal up the two windows that we haven't put glass in right now. One of them comes to about here, and then we've got a small amount for the other side over here. We have to do the measurements, so we'll get that marked out and then cut up, and we can start gluing that in. Temporary windows now in, one there and one over here, so that's going to seal the wheelhouse up quite nice for keeping it cool from that air conditioner. Also stops the smell of the exhaust from coming into the wheelhouse when we've got a trailing wind.
Most critical component, you got to be comfy on your tushing. So at the moment we've got no seats. Well, there's seats mounted in the wheelhouse. However, this seat here is upside down. The seat here wobbles around, and the ply base in which the seats rest is also not fastened down. So we're going to drill 6mm holes through the plywood, and then we can bolt it down, and then once we're done we'll mark out the chairs and drill 8mm holes to those, and then we've got a little bit of slop so we can get them lined up perfectly for the person in the helms position here. So we've completed drilling through the wood and the first layer of timber in the bulk section, but because the drill bit's not long enough, I'm going to have to remove the timber to get more clearance, and then we'll be able to drill through the remaining parts of the box metal underneath this the frame here. So let's crack on with that. So the next step is we're going to bolt the plywood down to the metal frame. The challenge that we've got is that the bolts we could get locally aren't long enough, so what we're going to do is we're going to countersink into the holes here for the bolts and get them further through the timber, and then yeah, we'll drill that about halfway through. We're now onto mounting the chairs, and we're going to drill the holes with a bit of clearance. We're going to drill 10 or 11mm holes, and then that way there's a little bit of wiggle room in the chair, and then we've got some big washers here that we can use, and then these will thread through the timber and then thread into the bottom of the chair.
I didn't expect us to be in this position so early into the relationship.
That's great, isn't it? Such a difference.
And there's a window.
Yeah, it's nice.
Oh, what a good job.
So it's got about 5 degrees or so of angle.
It's a big wheelhouse, but it's small in another way.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Woohoo!
Your first seat in a bolted down seat.
Oh my god, it's been a long time, isn't it?
Isn't it?
I'm just going to stand and see what it feels like. Oh, it's really
good, eh?
cool. Great choice. Great choice.
Yeah.
We were talking to Burke on the phone, on a video chat. We're just organising visas and things. We were just talking about having this in here. It was like, oh my god. Yeah.
Yeah, this is pretty transformational.
It is, yeah. We were saying, you know, he said, "Can we have a hammock in there?" And I said, "Well, there is a little sleeping platform right available."
Oh no, I've already claimed this.
Oh, have you?
Scott is my witness. I claimed that as my bed yesterday.
You'll have to put up with a hammock at the other end of the room. That's awesome. Thank you very much, guys.
Chaos, but we have 2 bolted down seats, so that's quite nice. Air conditioning, we have no rain coming in because the windows are on. This is a much bigger improvement. This is lovely.
So before the sea trials begin on the boat, you can see that we have quite the mess in the wheelhouse, and we're going to have to go through and clean all this up, stow things down in the engine room and in storage areas underneath, and got a bit of a job ahead of us, it seems.
Thank you, Scott, for all you did. You worked so hard on so many multiple jobs. We ended up with lists every day because there was so much happening. Bolting computers down, helping in the engine room, IT and systems. Amazing, you guys did so good. Thank you.
With the boat heading further offshore this trip, registering our EPIRBs was one of the jobs on the list.
We're organising going on anchor, so it's a lot of just stowing stuff. I'm just getting the last of the dishes done. Just, cat's very hot. Getting rid of bottles around the place that we've been using as storage. Our fiddles are great. Just stowing everything behind our fiddles. So a lot of experimenting, finding out what works. The computers are of course bolted down. I'll just tidy up in here a little bit. And the guys are just sorting out wiring to get a camera into the
Okay, mate, can you just stand aside
room.
a bit?
You can see we've got to tidy up. Breakfast and dinner last night, leftovers. We'll tie down some things on the back deck. We can get out the heads today for the first time. We were hoping to get down to Malulabar. There's a commercial trawler berth there, not far from where Duncan is, to give Duncan a chance to work more on his systems on the boat. But it's turned out that it's not possible right now, so weather didn't permit. Now we're okay, but we started getting the boat prepared for a proper out there in the swell. But I would say we're at stage 2, so we'll be okay with a light swell, not much wave, very little wind. We've got a cyclone that's up north they're saying should hit land 3 to 4 days from now, and it'll be a Cat 3. So we may get a wee bit of wind when we come back in the next 2 days. Just depends. We'll see how it goes, how everyone's feeling. If everyone's a little bit uncomfortable, we'll come back in early. If everyone's okay, ready to go, the cat's coping. My leg, which dislocated, so I'm a little bit slower, but everyone's looking after me really well. But that means that we have to kind of take account of the weakest link, if you like, the most vulnerable. It's a week of heat wave, a week of working really hard to get everything done on board. So we're tired, so we'll go gently. Just come forward and run over the top of the anchor if you're on there.
Yeah, sometimes you have to coordinate because of the switch for the steering or anchor.
Oh,
So
okay.
So sometimes you have to coordinate. So
I was swim more than anchor.
we don't
Right.
really need steering when we're pulling the anchor up. It's just more thrust back and forth.
Don't be afraid to do a Titanic up the front.
This is how she ended up after a bit of a spruce up. You can see things are strapped down over the back. We've got a few things on the ground, but they're in tubs around this side here. Nice and tidy. This is sort of tucked away. Not too stressed about that moving. We're going on flat seas. Alright, time to do our checks and get this thing fired up.
It's in neutral and it's on idle.
Awesome, thank you. Plenty of water. Lovely. Hoik. Right. Plenty. Let's check that fuel's on. Yep, we've got it on. We've got 650-ish litres of fuel. This one is on. That one is on.
Power's on.
Master power is on.
Right.
Right, gauge is on. Fire in the hole.
Okay. Engine. Good.
Yep. go, just adjusting lines and things like that. So I've just let everybody know what I want them doing. Scott's on the rear line, Duncan's on the springer, on the midline sort of thing, and then the very front end of the boat, he's coming up and he's going to be undoing the lines at the front. So
You've got fuel sorted, eh?
fuel's all sorted.
Fuel's ready?
Fuel's ready, yep. Jess is floating, I'm backing. You clear on that springer, Duncan?
Setting up now, go. Headlight off.
Thanks for that. Is the rear line clear?
Rear line clear.
This is the third time getting around this corner. We got stuck on it the first 2 times and it looks like we're clear.
We're clear.
Okay, thanks.
Are you going to reverse?
I don't know yet. It's whatever the boat's going to do.
Yeah, it's turning reverse now. Yep, down.
Straight out. You're good.
Yeah.
Just watch that side there.
Yeah.
Alright. Your bum is clear.
Okay. Alright, we're out of here. Hey. Oh, thanks. Thanks. Oh, yeah, I'll mark it. Am I clear on that side? Clear boats? Clear boats.
Yeah, we're clear this side.
Clear left, clear right. You're going to spin on a dime. Why can't you do that in a reverse machine?
There we go, what a fantastic occasion. What an absolutely fantastic feeling. Feels so good to be out on the water. All the hard work for years and years and years has paid dividends. What a monumentous and wonderful occasion. Thank you to Dame and Jess for allowing me to be a part of this. This is a very special thing for me. And it's been an absolute joy and a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks for the footage, Dean. Thanks for dropping in. It was really great to see you and we hope you guys are having a nice rest.
So out the back, pretty flat water, but it kind of shows you the bum doesn't sit real deep on Brupeg, so you don't get a massive weight behind. You don't get a huge amount of like prop wash and so on. That's obvious anyway. You can see where the prop's coming out, but it's all pretty easy going. You see there's a bit of water just pushing around those wings. When they go down, that drag will go. But up front, let's go have a gander. Beautiful up here. So bow wave do we make? Duncan driving away. God, it's nice to be finally out on the water in this thing. It's a unique boat in that it feels so incredibly rock solid when you're walking around on it. It's not like a normal yacht, it just doesn't move. Down here we've got a cat, A&E. She's calm but at the same time internally panicked. So what's the plan?
I'm just going to go out the head, so we're going to anchor up and have something to eat, and then we'll talk about what we're going to do next.
Part of sea trials for Brupeg is whether the cat can actually handle being at sea with us. It's looking like it might not be possible. We'll have to have a bit of a chat about the cat and really talk to the vet and figure out what we're going to do. We'll keep you updated.
A couple of things we want to check. We've got 43 psi, 48 psi going on there. We've got 4 psi boost at, call it 1200 revs. We're going to go down and have a look what we've got in the engine room. One of our plans for the sea trial was to steam out into the bay and anchor up and then start testing some of the systems that we needed off dock. Things like generators, how much solar we can sustain throughout the day, that sort of thing. With the boat anchored, it was all good. We weren't using a huge amount of power, but as soon as we started running, we started consuming more. That was an issue. Here you can hear the genset start up, and this allowed us to start testing our onboard power systems. And if you listen really closely, in a second, you'll hear it stop. That was a bad thing. With all the other noise going on the boat, we didn't realise it had stopped. However, Brunette had picked it up before we did, and we were slowly losing power. With the Cash struggling with the 1 metre swells we were pushing into at sea, and the generator having some issues that we didn't understand at the time, we still hadn't completed all of the testing we wanted to do, things like calibrating the compass. However, we were running out of daylight, and at 45% power on board the boat, Jess made the call to head back to the dock so that we could resolve some of these issues. Coming back to the dock after hours, there was nobody from the marina that could grab any of the lines, so we decided to drop Scott off at the fuel wharf at the end here. He was going to race around and meet us at our berth so we could grab the lines when we tied up. Now that we're back, time to figure out why the genset stopped.
So what do we got in there, Dad?
I don't know, we'll find out once we've unexploded it. Oh, that's a pretty simple fix. I think we found the problem. That is too much of a gap. Okay, so it's approximately 83,000 degrees Fahrenheit in here. And we're not going to fix that right now. We're going to wait for this whole room to cool down. But the plan is simply to put that pipe back on, do the hose clamp back up, and run it for 20 minutes. If it doesn't blow the pipe off, then we know that we didn't do the hose clamp up. If we do blow the pipe off, then we know it probably is the return line that's needed, and we just need to plumb one in. With great comments comes great responsibility, and I completely stuffed up when it came to the return line on that genset. It didn't cause the failure with what happened this time. That was just a hose clamp not being tight enough and blowing off. That's a symptom of a totally different issue that we're having with that genset. The little hose barb fittings that are on it were never designed for pressure. They were crappy little pressed steel fittings. So as soon as you put any pressure in there, they just, and with diesel being a great lubricant, it just slides straight off. There was no way I could get it to seal up. So I have a solution for that. I'm going to get a stainless hose barb, cut the end of the barb off, and actually TIG this onto the original fuel pump hose barb. I'm going to essentially put a better hose barb on it so that we can stop that from happening. That's the first issue. The second issue is the return line. I made a choice at the end of a workday when I was really tired that I didn't need that return line, and because I basically misunderstood the way that the fuel system worked with the gravity fed system, and that was an error on my part. One of the issues that I saw with the original injector that's in this engine is the hose that went on the return line just had a little wee clamp on it. Obviously it had no pressure going into it, going back to a gravity fed system. There was, there's no way you'd even get half a PSI of pressure on there. And with a pressurized system, I just thought there's no way that that's going to work. It's just going to fail completely. So I gave up on having the return line. I thought, well, I'll seal it off and just do it that way. That was a dumb mistake. So I'm going to be doing a completely different system. I'm going to go with hydraulic fittings because there's no way I can get hose clamps to stay on the crappy little original fittings. So what I'm going to be doing is drilling out this hydraulic fitting, and I'm going to be TIGging that onto the injector return line, which allows me to plug it onto a really decent hydraulic push lock fitting, which allows me to put some nice return pipe to go back onto a good stainless barb that will be going into a T fitting that is before the fuel pump, between the filters and the fuel pump. So that's my solution. A lot of people commented on it. I really appreciate that. Thank you. You kept pointing out something that I should have known, but I was too tired and I made a stupid choice. So I'm really glad you guys commented on it, because I think the generator at the end of it is going to be much, much better. So once we were back on the dock, it was time to have a feed and refuel so that we could tackle some of the jobs that we'd come up with on this sea trial.
So I did some network sniffing, and we just thought, let's just telnet, which is a network protocol, into the sounder's IP address, and we've managed to get in.
So what does this mean? If you can get into the sounder, what does that actually mean?
It means we might be able to interrogate and pull data directly off it,
And therefore not use the
therefore
North Star.
not using the North Star CPU.
Nice.
So those who are used to Windows, I've just done a directory, and there is a standard Windows looking directory right there. So Scott and I will go into those and have a look, and we might be able to do something with that.
So what have you guys figured out this morning?
What we've done on the network is we've now captured the data being sent, we haven't made sense of it, sent by both the radar and the sounder.
Yeah.
So from a network point of view, we can see them operating, we can see the images from the radar, or the data which form the images of the radar, we can see them being packaged up,
Yep.
sent. Same with the sounder. What Scott's just suggesting is we've got a whole lot of, we're going down pretty low on the data, so we're looking at raw hex here. It's not bleedingly obvious what it is, so there could be a layer of encryption sitting over there. We've got to the point where Scott's managed to capture quite a bit of this, and we turn the radar on, radar off, so we could then pull out what it was contributing to the whole thing. So it's basically a case of going through and seeing if we can identify, A, with the sounder, can we pull out a simple little bit of data which says, here's our depth, because that's really all we need. Even if it's encrypted, if we can pick out a little bit of structure, we can therefore filter and find it. So that could be a nice Sunday evening activity. With the radar, possibly a little bit more complicated. There are a lot of IP addresses being used here. Some to do with the management of the whole network. There's a lot of data. You can actually see origins of Navman software here, because a lot of the origins for North Star come from Navman, so you can actually see the software evolved through the company progressions.
So you're sort of digging down into the code of it all now.
We're back in the dinosaur ages,
Yeah, right.
when this was first developed.
Wow.
Yeah. But we think we've narrowed down sort of the key addresses where the real data that we're interested in is starting to happen. So just saying to Scott, we're driving back to Caloundra. This, I suspect, could be my entertainment in the car, just going through some of this data, and no doubt we'll have a very data-centric conversation on the way down. Once we start to see these patterns emerge, we may have a solution.
Nice. So the boost pressure on our red arc gauges isn't working for some reason, so we need to essentially turn it on so that we've got boost pressure showing on the gauges down in the engine room, and that way we can calibrate the boost that we're getting up on the brunette dash up top. We can calibrate it to be the same as what we're seeing down here on the red arc gauges. The red arc gauges are kind of our source of truth, because we know there's no real interpretation there, it's just the number is whatever that number is. So boost is this guy down the bottom here.
So we should have numbers there. The outer dial is exhaust gas temperature, and then there should be some digits next to the pressure for boost.
You might be able to see a PSI, maybe, depending on the camera will show it, a little PSI gauge there. But
so we think there's a setting which says NC or a number. So NC, I guess, means not connected for the pressure sensor. So we're going to go through and convert that to 0.0, and maybe that's the indication to the red arc gauge that yes, we do want to measure boost. The boost is all wired up, so it's basically a vacuum hose from the engine.
so the boost for red arc flows through this pipe here, this little tube. So you've got, this is your inlet manifold here, so you'll see a positive pressure going, when the turbo is working, you'll see a positive pressure coming through all the way through here and then into this box, and then it essentially connects to the sensors at that point.
So the process is, and it's actually similar for the volt and current gauge, that we had to physically activate the current setting for the main start batteries. So you can see these little push buttons next to each gauge. So there's a very intricate approach to turning it on, pressing the buttons, holding, and all the rest of it to get to the right menu item. So Damien's going to sit there with the instructions and read them out as to when I press and hold the button and go through the whole cycle.
So with very little swearing involved, you can now see that there's potentially, if the camera will show it, there's 2 zeros there, 0.0 psi. So that's our boost source of truth now, so we'll be able to tell what our true boost is, and then we can calibrate our brunette gauges to suit that. A couple of things we did when we were out on the run just before, we recalibrated the tachometer, so we weren't 100% certain if the tacho was perfect. So what did you guys calculate to?
3.1 out of 3. So we
Right.
estimated, so we're looking at the pulley ratios, but one of the unknowns is that one of the pulleys is driven by the internal fuel injector.
That's right. Yeah. So it's not just a relationship between the main crank pulley and the alternator. It's a relationship between the main crank pulley and the gearing behind the front cover, and then the alternator as well, because it's the fuel pump drive that drives the alternator, not the crank. So it's a bit convoluted. Anyway, long story short, we thought it was a 3.6 to 1 ratio. It was a 3.61 to 1 ratio. So that sort of threw the RPM out a little bit. The guys calibrated that manually, so literally got a bar, turned the engine over 1 RPM, and did a really precise measurement of how much that pulley on the alternator had manoeuvred, so they could then put that into brunette to get really accurate RPM. We've got that. They also adjusted the temp, so the temp was reading, 10 degrees too high?
Yeah, so we did a cold measure before we went out, and with a handheld gun, because the cold temperature is lower than the red arcs will tell us.
Yeah.
But the cold temperature, given our current weather, was sitting around the low 30 degrees, but that's pretty true for the water and around here. So we calibrated the low end, it was pretty spot on, and then the high end, we got the engine up to working temperature. We did have temperature up on the red arc gauges, and we had the handheld thermometer. The thermometer and the red arc gauges agreed, and that allowed me to calibrate the top end of the calibration curve. And these are negative temperature coefficient sensors. So basically I could draw a graph for low temperature and high temperature, and as Damien said, it turned out our temperatures were measuring about 10 degrees too high for the oil temp and the coolant temp. Which sat well with us. It's what that would then bring it back to what we expected it to run at and what we saw on the dyno. So now we've adjusted that. We did a short run after that, and it made far more sense. So I think we're cruising around 82 degrees C, thereabouts, and so we now got all 3 measures of temperature in agreement.
It's been an unbelievably hot and humid week that we've been working on the boat with Scott and Duncan up. It's been bloody awesome having them here. We got so much done. We're hoping to get a bit more cold weather now, so there's a cyclone north of us, and it's literally starting the first lot of wind that we've seen in a week. We've got, I don't know, 10 knots coming through now. That's about the windiest it's been all week. It's been, what, 2 or 3 knots the whole time.
Oh, so still.
Yeah, and stifling. So we've got a little temperature sensor in the engine room, and Duncan went in there the other day when we were steaming, and he glanced at it, and what did you say, 58
It looked like 58. I couldn't believe my eyes, but it was stinking hot.
Yeah. Doesn't surprise me. It gets pretty warm in there when the engine's running. We don't have our ventilation set up yet. That's on the list to be built very soon. But all up, a pretty successful trip up, I reckon, eh?
Oh, very much so. And just to add to the sensor, we've been very conscious of measuring carbon monoxide down there.
Yeah.
So both with the Cummins and the Jetset.
We're both exhausted. Yeah. We're both exhausted, and it's been a really long week. But yeah.
So, I brought my aviation headsets that can read CO measurements, and it was saying 0. We did the brave thing. We sent Damien in wearing them.
Yeah,
he was recorded, but I was monitoring on the phone.
Yeah.
So 0%, 0 parts per million, which is actually very encouraging. And part of our protocol with our half-hourly checks on the Cummins in the engine room, including pumping up the grease for the various parts there, we would look at the sensor on the way through the door.
Yeah.
So apart from reading 58 degrees C, it was coming up 0 ppm for CO. So that's very good outcome.
So one of the hardest bits of a visit is the goodbye for us. After all the chaos, we spent some time together. Scott is dropping Duncan home, staying overnight with him, and then heading into New South Wales back home. We look forward to catching up with you in the next live feed. Scott and Duncan, thank you so much, guys.
Thanks guys.